All right, now it's been a minute since it happened, so what in the heck happened with this whole CrowdStrike thing? I'm Woody Huffines. I'm the nurse to go in McKinney, Texas, and this is Tech for the Untechnical. When that CrowdStrike thing happened, the Thursday after the Republican convention, or the morning after the Republican convention was held last month, a lot of stuff went down. United Airlines, American Airlines went south. A lot of banks had problems. There were problems every place from restaurants to 911 call centers. It's very widespread, very deeply felt computer outage that was caused by a CrowdStrike update that caused the problem. So, how did we fail at this? Well, from my perspective, there's four components to this failure. The first component is we really don't understand what our cybersecurity risk is. We don't have somebody that's looking across all of those industries in the depth necessary to understand that vulnerability. Now, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Administration, every time I say that, I feel like I'm repeating myself. Anyway, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Administration may have the mandate to do that, but they don't regulate the airlines and the banks and the 911 centers and the restaurants and all the places that this could happen. So we don't have a single clearinghouse to say, you know what, CrowdStrike is a vulnerability and we need to treat that as critical infrastructure. And I understand why people are a little hesitant given the government's behavior in the last 3 or 4 years. You know, shutting down discussion about COVID or vaccines by pressuring the social media companies not to talk about it, or the IRS targeting conservative groups, or the stuff that's been going on. It's this, the trust for having a government guy come in and say, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you, let me get into the very depths of your computer system, and you're not going to let him do that because you're not going to trust that whoever that Hanyaker isn't going to try to find something to hang you up on. And that's just the world we live in. So there's no way that we have a good view of what the vulnerability for something like CrowdStrike is, because we don't have a really big picture of it, and we don't have a way to get a really big picture of it at the moment. The second thing that fell in line to cause this problem is the nature of computers and how computers interact with security systems or antiviruses. When a computer boots up, the first thing that happens is it loads what's called the kernel, and the kernel is at the very lowest level of the machine language and the interface with the software. Think of it this way: it's like the foundation of a house. So first the kernel loads, and then the operating system loads on top of that foundation of the kernel load. Now think about it from a house perspective. If your builder came out and really messed up the foundation before they started building your house, when the guys that were supposed to put the studs up came to the site and said, good Lord, this thing's not plumb and it's running downhill and uphill and there's gaps and we can't build a house on this foundation. We have to stop and fix the foundation before we can do anything else. Well, the same thing happens with a computer. If there's a fault in the kernel, the operating system goes, no, time out. I can't load. There's something fundamentally wrong here, and it could be a bad thing, so I quit until you fix this foundational problem. So that's the way the operating system and the kernel load on a computer. Now, the nature of antivirus software, or security software generally, is to load at the kernel level. Because anything that loads after the kernel level, if another program can get in and change the kernel or change the foundation of the operating system and everything that's running on the computer, that virus would be able to do a lot of damage to your computer. That malware would be able to do a lot of damage to your computer because it's loading at the foundational level in the kernel. So antiviruses load first at kernel level, so they have very deep level access to the way the computer's operating. So you with me? That's the way that stuff works. Second problem, the way computers work, they work that way. Okay, third problem, CrowdStrike, this is the thing that drives me crazy. The CrowdStrike had to do such a horrible job because there was a driver that loaded with the kernel that was an improper driver that's been there for quite some time. There's some discussion whether it's been there for a year or 18 months or 3 months. I mean, there's a fight going on about how long that they had delivered this faulty driver that was sitting on all these machines. And when they did an update to their antivirus package, the antivirus package called that driver in an inappropriate way and tried to write to memory in an inappropriate way because the driver itself that loaded at the kernel was broken. So CrowdStrike missed for some period of time. We don't know exactly how long, and there's still the security researchers are still fighting about that. They had missed it for this long, and then when they ran this update, it caused a problem that every computer that had that driver on it, when it tried to boot, shut down because the foundational elements of the computer, the kernel, wasn't loading properly, so the OS went, nope, not going to do it. Now, so we didn't know what the vulnerability was. We didn't understand what the vulnerability of a CrowdStrike driver was. Nobody went and said, you know what? If CrowdStrike has a bad driver, it could take down 2 major airlines and a bunch of banks. Maybe we need to pay attention to that. Second thing is the way computers and antiviruses work. The third thing is CrowdStrike did a terrible job of making sure that they didn't install something that was going to cause a problem. I don't know what their testing mechanism is, but good Lord, they rolled an update out that took down the world and it wasn't properly tested. It can't have been tested properly because of what happened. And then the fourth thing is that after these things happen, the recovery from them is very difficult because, going back to the first thing, since we don't understand the vulnerability, we don't have a good plan to recover from that kind of incident. Just think of anything else. If you understand that you have a vulnerability for a hurricane, for example, if you live on the Gulf Coast and you're worried about hurricanes, you know what the risk is from a hurricane, and if a hurricane happens, you know what the mitigation is to get everything back up and running. I got to get linemen in here to put the lines back up because the electrical's going to be down. I probably need some boats to pull people out of their houses because it's going to flood at Houston. I'm going to need a bunch of trailers for people to stay in, like after Katrina and the FEMA trailers. I'm going to need, there's a list of things that you know you need, and you know you need them because you're familiar with that vulnerability, of what the vulnerability is of a hurricane. Because we don't have a good vulnerability assessment, because we are siloed in our knowledge, this industry has this way and this industry is running this way and this industry is running that way, we don't have a good cybersecurity solution or response plan because we don't know what the problems are. Now, do I have a solution for this? No, I really don't. But at least now you have a chance to understand how, because a piece of software got updated, there was a cascade of failures that ended up where we are. I'm Woody Huffines on the Nurse to Go in McKinney, Texas. This is Tech for the Untechnical. If you find this information helpful or fascinating, hit the like button, subscribe, share it with your friends. If you have any questions about why I think what I think, put it in the comments below. And maybe one day we'll talk about the conspiracy theory around CrowdStrike and the FBI. Maybe. Y'all take care.